The night everything changed. At exactly 11:14 p.m. on a Tuesday night, Cassandra Cole received a voicemail that would destroy the life she thought she had. She was already in bed. The room was dark. Her husband, Derek, was sleeping beside her, his breathing slow and steady. On her nightstand sat 2 glasses of wine. His was empty, hers barely touched. She had been scrolling through Instagram. Nothing unusual, just photos of people she vaguely knew doing things she didn't care about. But then her phone buzzed. One voicemail. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. She almost put her phone face down and went to sleep like she did every other night. But something made her sit up. Something in her gut, that quiet animal instinct that women learn to silence because people call it paranoia, told her to press play. She pressed play. The voice on the other end was shaking. Cassandra, my name is Melinda Park. You don't know me, but I know your husband. I know Derek Cole. A long pause. I was married to him too. Before that Tuesday night, Cassandra Cole was the kind of woman who made other women feel both inspired and slightly exhausted. She had built Life Bloom Skincare from a spare bedroom in her apartment in Austin, Texas, into a company worth $34 million. She had done it herself, without a business degree, without family money, without a single investor who didn't laugh at her first. She started with $1,400 in savings and a hand lotion recipe she had developed while dealing with her own chronic eczema. She photographed the products on her kitchen counter. She drove to farmers' markets on weekends and convinced strangers to smell things. 7 years later, Life Bloom was on the shelves of Whole Foods, Nordstrom, and Target. Cassandra had been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, and 3 separate podcasts about women in business. She was brilliant. She was driven. And 3 years ago, she had fallen completely, embarrassingly, head over heels in love with Derek Cole. Derek was a structural engineer, steady, smart, the kind of man who fixed things around the house without being asked, who remembered the names of your friends' children, who said, "Drive safe," every single time you left. They had met at a rooftop fundraiser for an after-school arts program in downtown Austin. He had complimented her on her speech. She had noticed the way he actually listened when she talked, not just waiting for his turn. They dated for 14 months. He proposed on a hiking trail outside Santa Fe with a ring he said had belonged to his grandmother. She said yes before he finished the sentence. Their wedding was small, 112 people, string lights and a live jazz band, and a 3-tier lemon cake that tasted like something from a dream. She had never been so happy. That was 2 years and 4 months ago, before the voicemail. Cassandra sat in her dark bedroom for a long moment after the message ended. Her husband was still breathing slowly beside her. She got up quietly, walked to the bathroom, and locked the door. She called the number back. It rang twice. "Hello?" The woman's voice was careful, like she had been rehearsing this conversation for weeks. "This is Cassandra," she said. "You left me a message." a sharp exhale. "Thank God," Melinda said. "I wasn't sure you'd call back." "Who are you?" Cassandra asked. "I live in Phoenix. I'm a teacher. Elementary school, 3rd grade." A pause. "I was married to a man named Derek Calloway for 11 months. We divorced 3.5 years ago." Cassandra's stomach tightened. "He told me his name was Derek Cole," she said carefully. "He tells people different things," Melinda said. "Different last names, sometimes different first names, too." The bathroom tiles were cold under Cassandra's bare feet. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I've been looking for almost 2 years," Melinda said. "He stole $180,000 from me, slowly, over the course of our marriage. By the time I realized what was happening, he was already gone." The air in the bathroom felt thin. "I found a woman in Denver after me. Her name is Tricia. He was with her for 8 months. She lost her entire retirement account." Cassandra lowered herself onto the edge of the bathtub. "And then I found a woman in San Antonio, Keisha. She lost her business. She had to close it. And then I found you," Melinda said quietly, "and your company." The words landed like stones in still water. "I think he's been with you long enough," Melinda said. "I think he's about to make his move." Cassandra sat in that bathroom for an hour. She did not cry. That surprised her. She had expected to cry. Instead, she just sat very still and let her mind go back through everything. The wedding ring that had belonged to his grandmother. She had never met his grandmother. He said she had died years ago, before they met. His family in general, scattered and estranged, he had explained. A difficult childhood. He didn't like to talk about it. She had respected that. She thought it showed emotional intelligence, knowing what you could share and what needed time. His job. He worked for a mid-sized engineering firm called Hartwell and Associates. She had met his colleagues at the Christmas party. She had been to his office. She had seen the blueprints on his desk. But had she ever actually verified any of it? Had she ever Googled him, really Googled him, the way you do before a first date? Not the way you stop doing once you trust someone. She sat in the dark bathroom and realized the terrible answer. She hadn't. She had been too busy running a $34 million company. She had been too happy to be suspicious. She thought about the money conversations. There had been a few in the past year. Derek suggesting she move liquid assets out of a high-risk brokerage account into a joint savings fund for stability. She had moved $400,000. He had suggested consolidating some of her company's smaller accounts for tax efficiency. He had introduced her to a financial advisor named Paul Garrett. She had liked Paul. He wore good suits and spoke in calm, confident sentences. She had moved another $1.2 million. In the bathroom. At 11:47 p.m. Cassandra realized she may have already lost $1.6 million. And Life Bloom, all $34 million of it, might be next. She did not wake Derek up. She did not scream. She did not call the police in a panic. She had not built a $34 million company by acting on the first impulse that came to her. She went back to bed. She lay beside her husband in the dark and stared at the ceiling and breathed slowly and deliberately, the way her therapist had taught her years ago during the hardest stretch of building Life Bloom. She let herself feel the terror. And then she put the terror in a box, and she started to think. By the time the sun came up, she had a plan. At 7:15 a.m., Cassandra drove to a Starbucks 2 miles from her house. She told Derek she had an early supplier call. He kissed her on the cheek and told her to drive safe. She sat in a corner booth with a black coffee and called her attorney. Mariela Okonkwo had been Cassandra's lawyer since Life Bloom had 3 employees. She was 51 years old, wore her hair natural and silver at the temples, and had the energy of someone who had seen everything and was no longer surprised by any of it. "Tell me everything," Mariela said. "Start from the beginning." Cassandra told her everything. Melinda Park's voicemail, the 3 other women, the $1.6 million already moved, the financial advisor named Paul Garrett. When she was done, Mariela was quiet for 5 seconds. "Okay," she said, "here's what we do not do. We do not confront him. We do not tip him off. And we do not move any money ourselves without my guidance, or it could look like you're hiding assets." "He's the one hiding assets," Cassandra said. "I know," Mariela said, "and we're going to prove it. But we have to do this right, or he walks. Understood?" "Understood." "I'm calling a forensic accountant today," Mariela said, "and I want you to call Melinda Park back and get me everything she has, every document, every bank record, every text message." "She's a 3rd-grade teacher in Phoenix," Cassandra said. "She doesn't have much." "She has more than you think," Mariela said. "Women like Melinda always do. They've been waiting for someone to finally listen." Melinda Park had a banker's box. She shipped it overnight to Mariela's office in Austin. Inside were 2 years' worth of work. Bank statements with highlighted withdrawals, screenshots of text messages, a printed copy of a fake financial document Derek had used to explain a large transfer, photographs of the man Melinda called Derek Calloway at a coffee shop in Scottsdale with a woman Melinda did not recognize. The date on the photos was 7 months into Derek's relationship with Cassandra. There was also a handwritten letter. It was dated 14 months ago. Melinda had written it to herself, documenting everything she remembered from the marriage, every lie, every suspicious moment, everything she had told herself was nothing because she loved him. Cassandra read the letter in Mariela's conference room and felt the walls of the room contract. Because half of Melinda's letter described scenes Cassandra recognized. The way he complimented your intelligence constantly, like he was building a case for it. The way he never seemed worried about money, even when he should have been. The way he always had a reasonable explanation, every single time. The way you felt slightly crazy for even having a question. Cassandra set the letter down. "He's very good," she said. "Yes," Mariella said, "he is, which is why we have to be better." The forensic accountant's name was Robert Finch. He was 60 years old, slightly disheveled, and wore reading glasses on a chain. He had previously worked for the IRS for 22 years before going private. He spoke in the flat, unemotional language of numbers, which Cassandra found deeply comforting right now. He needed 4 days. When he came back, his report was 37 pages long. The highlights. Paul Garrett had no license with the Texas State Securities Board. The financial advisory firm he claimed to represent, Garrett and Ellis Wealth Partners, had no registered address, no SEC filings, and no record of existence. The $1.2 million Cassandra had transferred on Paul Garrett's advice had moved through 3 shell companies before landing in an account in the Cayman Islands. The account was registered to a company called Meridian Blue Holdings, LLC. Meridian Blue Holdings, LLC, had been incorporated in Delaware 4.5 years ago. Its registered agent was a man named Thomas Reeves. Thomas Reeves. Robert Finch placed a photograph on the conference table. Cassandra looked at it. It was her husband. Younger, different haircut, but unmistakably her husband. Thomas Reeves, Derek Cole, Derek Calloway. The man had at least 3 names, and probably more lives than she had counted. Cassandra looked at the photograph for a long time. "How many women?" she asked Robert. He took off his reading glasses. "We've confirmed 5, but the pattern suggests more. The account has been active for 9 years. 9 years. What does he do with the money?" she asked. "Spends some of it, but most of it sits. He's been building toward something." Robert paused. "Your company, Miss Cole. He's been building toward Life Bloom." Mariella contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. An agent named Dana Holloway took the case. She was compact, methodical, and spoke in short sentences that contained a great deal of information. She had worked financial fraud for 11 years. She had seen this pattern before, she said. Not often, but before. "He's what we call a long-con romantic fraudster," Dana said. "He targets high-net-worth women, builds genuine emotional trust over 1 to 2 years, then gradually moves assets. The final phase is usually a large transfer triggered by a manufactured crisis." "What kind of crisis?" Cassandra asked. "Medical emergency, business threat, investment opportunity with a tight deadline, something that requires you to act fast and move a lot of money without thinking too hard." Cassandra thought about the past few months. Derek had mentioned twice that he was worried about some volatility in her brokerage account. He had suggested she might want to move more into the secure fund Paul Garrett managed. "He's already warming up the crisis," Dana said. "We're close." The plan was this. Cassandra would go home and act normal. She would tell Derek she had been thinking about his advice. She would say she wanted to move a larger portion of Life Bloom's operating fund into the account Paul Garrett managed. The FBI would let the transfer initiate, and the moment Derek or Paul Garrett touched the money, they would move in. "Can you do this?" Dana asked Cassandra. "Go home tonight and act like everything is fine?" Cassandra thought about the 11 months Melinda Park had lost. She thought about Tricia in Denver and her retirement account. She thought about Keisha in San Antonio, who had to close her business. She thought about the 9 years and the 5 confirmed women, and probably more. "Yes," she said, "I can do this." She stopped at Whole Foods on the way back. She bought salmon and asparagus and a bottle of Pinot Noir, the kind Derek liked. She drove home. She walked in the door. Derek was at the kitchen island, laptop open, reading something. He looked up and smiled. That warm, steady smile, the one she had loved. "Hey, you," he said. "Hey," she said. She kissed him. She put the groceries on the counter. She opened the wine. They ate dinner. They talked about a new hiking trail he had read about near Fredericksburg. They talked about whether to repaint the guest room. They talked about nothing in particular, in the easy, comfortable way of 2 people who have shared a life together. And all the while, Cassandra sat across the table from the man who had 3 names and 5 confirmed victims and 9 years of crimes, and she held every single feeling she had in an iron grip and smiled. Later, she would not be able to say how she did it. She thought about Melinda's handwritten letter. She thought about what she was doing this for. She took a sip of wine and asked Derek how his day was. 3 days later, Cassandra started the conversation. They were sitting in the living room on a Sunday afternoon. Natural light, a relaxed moment. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told him, "about the brokerage account." He looked up from his book. The light changed in his eyes just slightly, just for a moment. "About moving more into Paul's fund," she said. "Yeah?" His voice was careful. "I think you're right. I've been too conservative." She let out a small, self-deprecating laugh. "You know how I am. I build things, and then I hold on to them too tight." He put his book down. "I just don't want you exposed if the market turns," he said gently. "Paul's fund is really stable. It's where I'd want Life Bloom's operating reserve to be." "How much do you think I should move?" she asked. He thought for a moment, like he was being careful. "Maybe 8 to 10 million, he said. "Just the reserve. You'd still have everything else." $8 to $10 million. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Can you set up a call with Paul this week? I want to do this properly." He smiled, the warm, steady smile. "Absolutely," he said. "I'll reach out to him tonight." The call was scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m. Dana Holloway's team was listening. Paul Garrett sounded exactly as Cassandra remembered him: calm, confident, authoritative in the way that certain financial people are, where the confidence itself becomes a kind of credential. He walked her through the transfer process. He sent documents. Cassandra said she wanted to have her accountant review the paperwork first. Paul said, of course, naturally, take your time. They scheduled a follow-up for Friday. After the call, Dana called Cassandra. We traced the number, she said. Paul Garrett is calling from a prepaid phone purchased in Albuquerque. We're getting close to identifying him. We think he and your husband have been working this scheme together for at least 6 years. 6 years. 2 men. How many women? Friday, Cassandra said. We do it Friday. The day was ordinary looking. Blue sky, mild October temperature. A normal Friday in Austin. Cassandra went to the office in the morning. She had told no one at Life Bloom what was happening except her CFO, a methodical woman named Grace, who had worked with Cassandra for 5 years and responded to the news with the calm efficiency of someone who had been mentally prepared for catastrophe for a long time. Grace handled the account logistics on Life Bloom's side. At 2 p.m., Cassandra got on the call with Paul Garrett. At 2:07 p.m., she authorized the transfer of $8.4 million. At 2:09 p.m., the money began to move. At 2:11 p.m., it hit the first shell company. At 2:13 p.m., the FBI froze every account in the chain. At the same moment, federal agents entered the Austin offices of Hartwell and Associates, Derek's engineering firm. Hartwell and Associates was real. Derek Cole was real there. He actually worked there as an engineer. But when the agents showed his personnel file to his colleagues, 3 of them looked confused, because his personnel file said his name was Derek Cole, and his colleagues called him that. But his payroll records, the ones he had submitted when he was hired 4 years ago, listed his Social Security number. And that Social Security number belonged to a man named Thomas Reeves, who had died in 2009. Cassandra was still in her office at 4:30 p.m. when Dana Holloway called. He ran, she said. Cassandra's heart lurched. He left the engineering firm at 2:45. We think someone tipped him. He's in the wind. She sat very still. What does that mean? She asked. It means he knows the jig is up, Dana said. He'll try to disappear. He's done it before. He has infrastructure for this. A pause. But this time we have significantly more than before. How do you know he won't just get away? Cassandra asked. Because this time, Dana said, we have 5 women who are very motivated to make sure he doesn't. Melinda Park flew in from Phoenix. Tricia Edmonds drove up from Denver. She was 53 years old and worked as a hospital administrator and had lost $240,000 from a retirement account she had been building for 20 years. Keisha Williams came from San Antonio. She was 47, had owned a catering company for 12 years, and had lost $380,000 before she realized the man she loved had been systematically draining her business accounts. A fourth woman, Renata Solano, joined by video call from Miami. She was 60 years old, a retired academic, and had lost $95,000. A fifth, Janet Chu, was in Seattle. She had lost $160,000 and had spent the past 2 years telling herself she had been too naive to trust anyone again. They sat in Mariella's conference room on a Thursday afternoon. 6 women, different ages, different cities, different stories. Same man. Cassandra looked around the table at these women, at what they had survived and what it had cost them, and felt something shift inside her, something large and permanent. She was the luckiest one in this room, because she had gotten the voicemail in time. Because Melinda Park had spent 2 years in a banker's box, and an overnight shipment, and a shaking phone call to a stranger, all on the chance that she might save someone else from what she had been through. "Thank you," Cassandra said to Melinda. Melinda shook her head. "I just got tired of being ashamed," she said quietly. "He's the one who should be ashamed." The room was silent for a moment. "He will be," Mariella said. "I promise you that." They caught him in El Paso, Texas, 12 days after he had disappeared from the engineering firm. He had rented a room at a budget motel under a name none of them had heard before. He had dyed his hair. He had a new phone and a backpack with enough cash to start over somewhere. The El Paso FBI field office picked him up at a gas station. His real name, the name on his original birth certificate, was Thomas Allen Reeves. He was 44 years old, originally from Waco, Texas. He had a high school diploma, and according to the arrest record, an exceptional memory for detail and an extraordinary capacity for long-term deception. He had been running versions of this scheme since he was 29 years old, 15 years. When the full investigation was complete, they identified 8 victims, 8 women, 8 lives altered, 8 savings accounts drained, 8 hearts broken in the most efficient and calculated way possible. He had stolen a combined total of $2.8 million over 15 years, and he had come within one voicemail of stealing $34 million more. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution called 6 of the 8 victims to the stand. Melinda Park went first. She was small and careful on the stand, and she told the truth plainly, without drama, without tears, which somehow made it worse. The jury watched her and understood exactly what had been taken from her. Keisha Williams went next. She brought the documentation of every transaction. She had kept everything. Her testimony was so precise and so thorough that the defense attorney did not cross-examine her. There was nothing to push back on. Cassandra went last. She wore a navy blazer and sat straight in the witness chair and answered every question with the same clarity she brought to investor presentations and product launches and every other thing she had ever built. She described the voicemail, the bathroom floor, the cold tiles under her bare feet at 11:47 p.m. She described calling Mariela at 7:15 a.m. at a Starbucks 2 miles from her house. She described going home that Sunday night and cooking dinner and opening wine and asking her husband how his day was. The prosecutor asked her how she had managed to do that, to go home and act normal. Cassandra thought for a moment. "I thought about the other women," she said. "I thought about what they had lost. And I thought about the women after me, whoever they would have been. And I knew that if I fell apart then, he would get away and start again. And I wasn't willing to let that happen." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts. 31 charges. Wire fraud, identity theft, bank fraud, racketeering, money laundering. Thomas Allen Reeves was sentenced to 34 years in federal prison. The judge said, while reading the sentence, that the calculated and sustained nature of the fraud, the deliberate targeting of women, the engineering of emotional trust as a tool of theft, represented one of the most methodical financial predations she had seen in 20 years on the bench. Thomas Reeves sat at the defense table with his hands folded and did not react. Cassandra watched his face. She had expected something: anger, defiance, even sorrow. There was nothing, and somehow that was the most clarifying thing of all. The $1.2 million that had moved through Paul Garrett's network, whose real name turned out to be Marcus Webb, a longtime associate of Thomas Reeves, was partially recovered through asset forfeiture. Cassandra got $780,000 back. The rest was gone. She considered that $420,000 the most expensive lesson of her life. It was also the cheapest it could have been. Of the 6 confirmed victims beyond Cassandra, the FBI was able to recover $610,000 in total. Melinda Park received $180,000 back, the full amount she had lost. Tricia Edmonds received $95,000. Keisha Williams received $120,000. The rest was distributed as far as it would reach. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough. But it was something. The board of Lifebloom had been notified of the situation during the investigation. Cassandra had been terrified of how they would respond. What she got instead was a letter. 7 board members, 7 signatures. The letter said, "We have watched you build this company with integrity for 7 years. What happened to you does not diminish that. We stand behind you completely. What do you need from us?" She read it 3 times. Then she called an all-staff meeting. She stood in front of 340 employees in the Austin headquarters and told them exactly what had happened. She did not minimize. She did not spin. She told them a man had tried to steal their company. She told them she had caught him. She told them Lifebloom was safe. And then she said, "If any of you has ever been in a situation like this, if any of you has ever been financially deceived or manipulated or stolen from by someone you trusted. You are not alone, and you are not stupid, and it is not your fault. The room was silent, and then someone started clapping. 6 months after the trial, Cassandra launched the Melinda Park Foundation. She named it after the woman who had spent 2 years building a banker's box and made one shaking phone call to a stranger. The foundation had 3 arms. The first provided legal and forensic accounting support to victims of romance fraud and financial exploitation, completely free of charge. The second ran financial literacy workshops, specifically designed for women who were starting or scaling businesses. Not just accounting, but the psychology of financial manipulation. How it works, what it looks like, why smart people don't see it. The third was a direct support fund for victims in acute financial crisis. Quick dispersal, no bureaucracy. Because when someone has just lost everything, they cannot wait 6 months for a committee decision.